So we are learning about income inequality and intergenerational mobility. So for the past two lectures, two or three lectures, we learned about income inequality. So we discussed how the income distribution looks like and why those distribution look that way. And then we discussed how to measure the degree of income inequality. And then we saw how it changed over time. Basically what we have seen is that income inequality has been increasing in most developed countries. And then we talked about what explains rising income inequality, focusing on our country. Now, so what we have learned so far about income inequality is basically it's like a snapshot of the income distribution at this given time. So when you say that how income inequality is, how income is distributed like this year or like 10 years ago, okay? So now what we are going to talk about today is whether the income inequality is transmitted over generations. Okay. So the simple idea is that whether we are asking whether the children of rich families are likely to be rich and children of poor families are likely to be poor. Okay? So that's the income, that's the intergenerational income mobility. So when you say that intergenerational income mobility is high, then there is a high chance that children of poor families can become rich, okay? Or children of rich families can become poor. Okay? When we are saying that intergenerational income mobility is low, then it means that there is a little probability that children of rich families become poor or children of poor families become rich. Okay? So it's basically this is the topic about the transmission of income inequality over generations. Okay? So actually it's quite an important thing actually to think about. So for example, like if you think of two societies that has an equal degree of income inequality at this moment of time, okay? Let's say two societies. But let's say in one society, that income inequality is basically, transmitted over generations pretty much the same. Let's say in the first society, the children of rich families will be rich as their parents, and children of poor families will be poor as their parents. Okay? But think of another country, let's say that have the same degree of income inequality as the first country, but let's say in the second country, there is a fair chance, there is a, let's say, high mobility, so that there is quite a fair chance that children of poor families can become rich, or children of poor families, rich families can become poor. Okay? And, two countries, even though they look like the same, when we look at their income inequality at this moment of time, right? But you can clearly say that those two are qualitatively very different, right? So, which country would you like to live in? Okay? First one, second one? Second one? First one. It depends on how rich your parents are, I guess, right? If your parents are pretty rich, then probably you want to live in the first country, right? And if your parents are not that rich, probably you want to live in the second country. So, which country is better probably depends on, the answers, individual answer will depend on, who you are asking, right? So that is, it's difficult to say. But let's say overall, when you think about the dynamism, okay, of the society, probably second country is much more dynamic. Probably people will pay more attention to what they are doing, what they choose, right? And then probably people will work harder in the second type of country than in the first type of country, because in the first type of country, basically what happens to your life is determined basically, at your birth. So probably there's a little motivation for anybody to do anything special in the first place. But in the second country, probably that it matters much more that individual, how much effort or how much, effort you make in your life, or what kind of things you do in your life matters much more in the second country. So probably, we probably, if we are basically neutral party, then probably it's better to be in the second type of country than not in the first type of country. So if you think about it, like first type of country, you can actually easily think of the examples if you look at the history, right? So in ancient societies or in medieval societies, right, what people do and what people do in their life pretty much depends on what your ancestors has been doing for generations, right? So think of the Korean society in ancient times or in medieval times or even in European countries or in most of European countries also, that's true. What your ancestors has been doing determines pretty much what you're doing today, right? So if your parents were, let's say, in noble family, then you are likely to be a noble. You're gonna be in a noble family, and then you probably do some like politics or something. If your parents were, let's say, craftsmen making, let's say, clothing or shoes or whatever, then you are probably making shoes or clothing, right? So there is actually pretty, large examples of the countries where the mobility is very, very low. Okay? Obviously, in the modern societies, that type of rigid social system is kind of rare, okay, but still exists, but it's kind of rare. Okay? So today, what we are thinking is that it's kind of separate. Also, that when you think of income inequality, it's basic income mobility is a bit separate topic, because income inequality, what we are looking at is how the income is distributed across individuals and families at this time. But in this case, we have to look at how the position of their income in the society changes over generations, from, let's say, father to son, from mother to daughter, or from parents to children. Okay? So we will use a little different, we will use a different logic and different way of looking at intergenerational income mobility. Okay? Now, to show some hint how the intergenerational income mobility looks like, I will show you some statistics. Actually, it's difficult to get the intergenerational statistics, but this is from a bit old, 2000, about 10 years ago. But I'm pretty sure that this pattern is still the same. Okay, what it shows is that this is father's education, and this is children's characteristics. Okay, so how children differ by their parental education. So this is up to lower secondary. This is lower level of education. This is higher level of education, more than higher secondary. Okay. So these are the people whose parents are college graduates. And these are the people whose parents are father is, let's say, primary or middle school graduates. Okay, now let's look at the children's characteristics. Their education level, more than higher secondary. So this is college level education. Now, lower education group, only 1/3. Here is 82%, 8 out of 10. So obviously you can see that education level is closely associated with their parents' education level. Okay. And then their occupation, professional occupation, generally like a higher paying occupation. For this group, it's only 18%. For this group, 33%. So you see a big difference. Now the income itself, monthly income, 4 million won or more. This is actually quite high income. Okay, if you look at our income statistics, we have seen a few lectures ago. Okay, not many people actually not that many percentage of people earn this much. And this one is only 9%. For this group, it's 17%. So it's about double. Okay? Average monthly income, 1.9, 2.4. So you can see there is a 0.5 difference. It's about 1/4. Okay? There's basically about 25% higher, this group and that group. Okay? So what you see is that there is basically clearly a strong association between how the parents do and how the children do. Okay, so education level closely related, and it's likely that these are generally lower income group. These are generally higher income group. So you can see that clearly there is a strong correlation between parents' income and children's income. Okay. Now, if you look at any other statistics, not only this survey, you will see very similar, actually, associations. It's not that. I mean, if you think of your intuitive sense, let's say you look around, your own experience will probably tell us that this is not that surprising. Okay. So, your own experience or your parents' experience will pretty much. No, I think it's going to be quite similar. And this is okay. One thing is if you think about it, let's think of this. Actually, there is a well-known debate about nature versus nurture. Okay? So we look at the close association between parents' performance, let's say, or income and children's income. And I think intuitively it's likely that is positive, okay? Without even any theoretical model, okay? We can, it's our experience tell us that's positive. The relationship should be positive. Then there is actually well-known debate between nature and nurture, okay, which means basically nature is basically they are born that way. Okay, so crudely speaking, parents with higher income generally have, let's say, higher ability. Let's say they may be just smart, or they may be just stronger, or whatever. So they have some natural characteristics that help them to be rich. Okay. And then we know that biologically, okay, some of the characteristics are inborn characteristics. They are just written in the gene. Okay, then the genes are transmitted over generations. So we can say that probably the parents of that ability will pass their gene to the same. I mean, some of their not whole thing because it comes from half from father, half from mother. So some genetics a bit strange. But anyway, you have to study biology. That's very fascinating. But anyway, so the nature part is that because of their biological, passing of genes, rich parents are likely to bear the children of higher ability. Let's say probably smarter or stronger. So that's the nature part. So probably nature is important. It's just a natural thing. This positive correlation, just a natural thing. But there is an argument that it may be the nurture. It may be nature, okay? But it's probably not that important, let's say, compared to nurture. Okay? So nurture story is pretty much this. Let's say the parents of rich parents, okay? They probably can provide better opportunities to their children. Okay? They are rich, so they can probably, let's say, live in a neighborhood that can offer, let's say, better educational environment. Okay? They can send their kids to, let's say, school of higher quality. They can hire somebody to teach their children, whatever. So they can use money to educate them better and then prepare their children better for, let's say, life after education. So in a way, it's just a nurture. Okay. So their ability, so poor families, rich families, their children probably, the nature of their children, let's say their inborn characteristics probably pretty much the same still. Okay. Those difference in the parental income can make difference. Okay. In how they educate them, so that's the nurture part. So nature versus nurture is actually a very interesting argument. So in this case, actually you can say that actually it's not clear, obviously, from this, whether it's nature or nurture. Okay, we know that these two can make this type of correlations. Okay, they are correlated. Okay. And one thing you probably want to know that then what kind of nature part? Okay, one thing actually, one interesting thing is the IQ and family background. Some people believe that IQ is an indication of higher inborn ability. Okay. For the time being, let's say that's true. What it shows is that blue one is higher IQ, IQ over 120. IQ 89 to 110 is actually average IQ. Because IQ, the score is designed to have 100 for average group. Okay, so IQ is just it's a made-up score. So this is pretty much average. This is like a higher tail. Okay. Now what you can see here is that what it shows is if you compare, let's say, the average group and higher group, okay, let's see what's bigger. So lower secondary group, obviously higher education, higher IQ is pretty small, but this one is pretty big. Okay. Because these bars, it's actually the height itself is because the number of parents' education, the distribution of parents' education is unequal. Okay, you cannot just see the height. You have to compare these two bars. So in this case, mostly average. In this case, there are both, but average is still. Vocational college still. But now, from university, now the higher education, higher IQ group is bigger than lower average education IQ group. Okay? So you can clearly see that there is a correlation between IQ and parents' education level. Okay? So generally, that parents with higher education level produce children of higher IQ. Okay? There's a tendency. Occupation is still the same. Okay? Professional, admin, clerical, these are generally higher income groups, and then all of them more higher IQ than average IQ. Now the others, the reverse. Okay. So clearly, not only their income or education level, also there is a strong correlation between IQ score and the parents' education. Okay. Or parents' income, actually. I think if you look at the income group, you will see still pretty much the same picture. Okay. So some people say that probably gives us the evidence that nature is important. But you should know that IQ is not a very good test for your natural ability. It's very well known that IQ test it can be actually practiced. If you take IQ tests repeatedly, your score generally will go up. Okay. So it obviously means that IQ is not a test for natural ability. And there is a very well-known study about the deficiency of IQ tests. And IQ tests, it depends on also the IQ test is very cultural. So which means that even though the natural abilities are same, let's say foreign student and Korean student take the, let's say, Korean version of IQ test, even though your natural ability is same, Korean students will generally score more because they are much more familiar with the cultural setting than the IQ test is generally set within the cultural setting. So it usually matters that whether you are, let's say, native or foreign born or it's different. Actually, there is a very well-known history about IQ test, how it is used to discriminate against minority groups, and that's very well-known story. For example, like in olden days in the U.S., they used IQ test to screen out to black people, okay? Because black people are generally, they are not that familiar with white culture. So when they take the IQ test, their scores are generally very, very low compared to, let's say, white people. The white people make tests, and they ask their black and white to take the test, and black people will score less. It's because the question itself is racially biased. So there is a story about IQ. So anyway, what it matters is if, let's say, if we believe IQ has some relationship with, let's say, some of your abilities, then there is a tendency that ability is a difference. But whether you believe it or not, no. Okay, so those two pictures, what it shows us is basically this. Let's say, in essence, it's likely that parents' education and children's education, or parents' income and children's income are likely to be strongly correlated. Okay. How strong, we don't know. Okay. But it suggests us that there must be a strong correlation, meaning we say the positive correlation, meaning that if the children's income is high, the parents' income is high, then there is a tendency that the children's income is high and parents' income is low, then there's a tendency that children's income is low. It does not necessarily mean that it's automatic. Okay? What I'm just saying is there is a tendency, okay, to do it. So you can actually we use the term intergenerational correlation. Okay. So if you draw a diagram, of, let's say, parents' education and parents' income and children's income, okay, and let's say this is parental income, let's say this is child's income, okay, and let's say we measure it based on their average, okay. So 0 means average among the parents' income, okay. And then we go this way, then it's basically you're farther away from this to this direction means that parents' income is higher than their average, more and more. And you go this way, then children's income is lower than average. Okay? So we just measure it against its average in its own generation. Okay? So this is among children, it's a higher income over average, lower income over average. Okay? So we are not actually measuring by the numbers, we are actually measuring by their difference from average within the generation. Okay? If the society has basically the, let's say, strict positive correlation between parents' income, children, let's say there's one extreme case. So which means that the richest parents will always have the richest child. And then second richest will have always the second richest child. Okay? And average gets always average. And then the lowest income, parents of lowest income will have always the child of lowest income. Okay? If that's the case, then you draw a let's say point. You pick a point. Then it's going to look like something like this. Basically, it's going to be like very close to 45-degree line. Okay? The lowest always gets the lowest. Average gets always, so it's going to be something like this. It's going to look like a straight line. Okay? Get the idea? Okay? So that this is the case of correlation is 1. Okay. If you have two variables that have correlation equals 1, and if you draw a scatter diagram between those two variables, it has straight line. And this correlation is 1, positive 1, plus 1. Okay? Okay? So this is the extreme case. If you go to, let's say, ancient society has very strict social ordering, it's probably true. The king's son gonna be the king. Okay? And then, I don't know, the lowest, okay, let's say butcher's son in probably in most of Asian countries, even in European countries, butcher is basically the lowest social class. Then butcher's son gonna be the butcher. Okay? Probably they are not that poor actually. Butchers are generally not that poor, but anyway, still. So in terms of social class, it's gonna be very low. Okay? Something like this. But correlation plus 1 is going to be pretty rare, actually. So in most cases, it's going to look like positively correlated, but not that strict. Okay? So if you let's say, draw scatter diagrams of the relationship, it's going to look like a cloud. But in general, it has a positive tendency. Okay? Which means that average parents are likely, may have average children, but there is some probability that have above average children or under average children. Okay? And higher income group, okay, they are not highest parents of highest income, not automatically gonna have a child of highest income, but in general, higher income group. Okay, the lowest, not strictly the lowest child, the income child, but generally low. Okay, it's not lowest, it's gonna be low. There's a very low probability of this child is gonna be on average or higher. And this child is very low probability of average or lower. So there is a positive tendency, right? So this case, we say correlation is positive, okay, but not 1, less than 1, okay? So this is a positive correlation. And then we can have actually another extreme case. Another extreme case is this. So what is the correlation in this case? Correlation is 0. Okay? There is no relationship. Okay? So the parents of, let's say, highest income or parents of lowest income has the equal chance of the child of high income and child of low income. So in this case, its correlation is 0. Okay. And obviously, there can be a case where it's a negative correlation. So higher income likely to have, let's say, child of lower income, and parents of low income have, let's say, likely to have child of higher income. Okay. But we are not going to talk about it because that's very, very rare, actually. Yeah. So it's probably doesn't fit the income mobility case. Okay. So in general, we will see later that correlation is between 0 and 1. Okay. So actually people use this correlation as the measure of the degree of intergenerational income mobility. If it close to be 1, then we say mobility is low. Okay, why is it low? Because it's like your parents' income matters a lot. Okay, so if you go this way, mobility is low. You go this way, mobility is high, right? Because if you go to direction of correlation becomes 0, that means that child's income, relative income, is not likely to be affected by, let's say, parents' relative income. Then we say mobility is high. Okay, so the size of correlation and the degree of mobility, basically, it's reverse. Okay, so we measure the correlation, basically. This is actually how people measure the degree of income mobility. Okay, so we use, for example, income inequality. We use, like, for example, Gini coefficient, right? Income ratios. But income mobility, we use correlation. Okay, so statistical concept of correlation. Okay, so that's what I mean. So people often use the correlation of income, but still some people can use correlation of education if you're interested in the transmission of education levels, or correlation of wealth as well. It's quite possible. Okay, whether the like wealthy and wealth and income is different. Wealth is the income is how much do you earn every year, let's say. Wealth is how much money you have in your pocket, okay, including your financial assets like housing assets, etc., and etc. So they are different. Here, what we are going to look at is mostly the income part, okay, correlation of income. Okay, now let's look at a model that explain how the intergenerational mobility is determined. We will use very simple model, okay? So I think you can follow. If you pay a little attention, then you can follow it quite easily. Okay, now what we are assuming here is, first, this is parents' income. T minus 1 is parents. T is the child. So T is current generation, minus 1 is basically previous generation. We have a parents. The parents uses their income between two things. One is his or her own consumption. They have to spend their money to enjoy themselves. And then rest of it, let's say they use the income to invest in their child. Okay? So they send their child to schools, okay, to colleges, to universities, those stuff. Or they may spend some to hire, let's say, teachers, or send their kids to, let's say, to places where the kid can learn ballet or whatever, music or painting, or it includes everything. Like, okay? That's IT minus 1. Okay. Now this is child's income. Then child's income is determined by two things. One is the parent's investment. Okay? So how much education the child received, for example. Okay, so IT. And this child's income, parent's investment, will yield return. Rate of return, we call it R. Okay? So 1 plus R is, so IT minus 1 income plus IT minus 1 is the extra income the child gets from, let's say, education. Okay? So this is the investment, return to investment. ET is the child's, the other factors. Okay? the other factors that affect the parent, the child's income. It can be luck, how lucky the child is. If the child has a business, if it's lucky, if he or she is lucky, gonna have higher income. Or it can be her own ability, let's say, independent of the investment itself. Okay? Get that? So it's pretty simple relationship. Okay. Now we assume what we are going to look at is that how the parent's action is determined. Okay, we assume parental utility function just uses the simplest form. U equals just 1 minus alpha times log c minus ct minus 1 plus alpha log yt. So what is this? Basically, this child's parent's utility will depend on C, consumption, and the child's income. Okay? So we assume the parents care about his or her own consumption and how much his or her child earns. Okay? So they care about how rich, how much earnings the child has. Okay? Why do they care about the child's earnings? I mean, it can be a thing. I mean, it can be just a psychological. Okay? You want to see your child to be a high income earner. Okay? It's to make them happy. Or they may care about, I don't know, they may care about, let's say, the child's support for themselves. So if the child has higher income, then they will give more money to their parents, so they care about how much child earns. Okay, whatever reason, okay? So the parents care about the child's income. Now, what is alpha? Alpha is between 0 and 1. Is a taste for YT relative to their own consumption. So one extreme case is, let's say, actually, we did not assume that way, but one extreme case can be alpha equals 0. If alpha equals 0, then parents do not care about the child's income. Okay? So they don't care how the child is doing. So it's obviously that this parents is not likely to invest any in their child's education because they don't care. Okay? That's very extreme. If it's 1, that means that they don't care whether they starve to die or starve to death. So that's probably very extreme. Okay? So it should be between 0 and 1. Okay? So if you close to 1, it means that parents care more and more about their child's income. If it becomes 0, then close to 0, that means that the parents care less and less about the child's income. So we can easily actually see that each parent will have probably different alpha, right? So some parents will care a lot about their child's income. Some parents probably not that much. Okay? So that's how we interpret alpha. Alpha is just how strongly the parents care about the child's income. Okay, then we can actually use this utility function and then these two as budget constraint. Okay? We can actually calculate, we can actually derive how the IT minus 1 is determined. Okay? So in this case, if you look at this closely, what parents does is that the parents can actually just decide IT minus 1. If they decide IT minus 1, CT minus 1 is automatically determined. Okay? And IT minus 1 is decided, then YT is basically determined. So actually, only one thing the parents actually determine is IT minus 1. Actually, on reverse, you can say the parents determine CT minus 1, but it's basically the same. But we are caring about IT minus 1. Okay, then using this utility function, we can actually derive the first order condition for maximizing the utility. Okay. That's actually pretty simple. If you don't know how to do it, it doesn't matter much. Okay, but you just believe that this is true. Okay. And then you just simplify this equation. You have this equation. So IT minus 1 is alpha yt minus 1 minus 1 minus alpha divided by 1 plus r et. Okay? So that's, now, let's look at this equation a little more closely. One thing, there are a few things that we can learn about from this. First thing, if alpha is greater, it minus 1 will be bigger. Okay? Simple. Big alpha means it minus 1 going to be bigger. Okay, that makes sense. Because alpha is bigger means that the parents care more about their child's income, so they will invest more in the child's education. So big alpha usually means more investment. Second, yt minus 1 big, it minus 1 gonna be bigger. Okay? What does it mean? It means richer parents, simply because they have more money, they can spend more money on their child. Okay? It's just a simple budgeting thing. Okay? So even though the two parents care equally about their child's education, child's income, okay, simply because the difference in their parents' income, the size of investment will be different. So yt minus 1 matters. Okay. And second, what you can see here is et. So this is a child's own ability or child's own luck. If it's bigger, then it minus 1 gonna be smaller. So it means that if the child can do better on his or her own, the parents has actually as an incentive to lower the investment. Because your child is gonna do very well on his or her own, then we don't have to spend much more money on child's education. If R is bigger, then investment gonna be higher. Okay? If R is bigger, this whole thing gonna be smaller, so IT gonna be bigger. So R is bigger means what? Rate of return on education on investment is bigger. That means what? With the smaller investment, you get higher return. So you will invest less. Okay? So you will consume more instead. Okay? So there is a relationship like that. So intuitively it makes sense. And then actually using this, we can just put this equation into here. Okay? And then we can actually get this relation. What is the relation between yt and yt minus 1? It's pretty simple. Yt equals beta yt minus 1 plus alpha et. Beta is just alpha times 1 plus r. Okay? So alpha is just a degree of how strongly they care about the child's income, and R is the rate of return. Okay? So the relationship between the child's income and parents' income will be stronger if beta is higher, which means if or alpha is higher or R is higher. Now we said that we measure the relation between yt and yt minus 1 using correlation. To calculate correlation, we have to calculate covariance first. Covariance divided by standard deviation. So here, the second equation. Correlation of x and y is just covariance between x and y divided by standard deviation of x and standard deviation of y. So I think you have learned statistics, so this should be familiar. Now, how do you calculate covariance? Covariance is expected value of x minus ex times y minus ey. And then there is a important relationship between two. Covariance of ax plus by and z is just a times covariance x and z and plus b times covariance y and g. Okay, now I'm not going to go over how to derive this thing. Actually, it is pretty simple if you know this, but I'm not going to go through this. It's not statistics class. So I just give you this, okay? Now, so covariance yt minus 1 is covariance beta yt minus 1 plus alpha et yt minus 1. This is just something like this, okay? So we use the fourth relationship to derive this. So what we derive here is a beta covariance yt minus 1, yt minus 1. So this is A covariance x and z. So beta covariance yt minus 1, yt minus 1. But yt minus 1, yt minus 1, covariance of same thing is actually variance of x. So variance of yt minus 1 plus alpha covariance et yt minus 1. So how you derive it? You use this one first, third and fourth relationship. Then you can derive this. Okay. So what it shows, okay, the child's income and parents' income, their covariance. Covariance is similar to correlation. Okay. So correlation is just scaling down this covariance using standard deviation of x and standard deviation of y. So actually the thing is that since the standard deviation of something is always positive, if covariance is positive, correlation is positive. If covariance is negative, then correlation is negative. Okay? So you can think the covariance and correlation are similar. Numbers are different. So this covariance, the relationship between yt and yt minus 1 is using this simple formula. It's just the beta times variance of yt minus 1 plus alpha times covariance et yt minus 1. So interesting thing is that variance of yt minus 1 times beta that has alpha and 1 plus r inside. And here actually there is a relationship between et and yt minus 1. So this is the other factors that determine the child's income, and this is parents' income. So the relationship between et and yt minus 1 also matters how it determines the correlation between parents' income and child's income. Okay, now let's think of this. Okay, so actually pretty simple. Okay, now see, because of the relationship between correlation and covariance, if this is bigger, then correlation gonna be bigger. So big covariance means higher correlation. So if you look at this, how you make this covariance bigger? Simple. Oh, okay, not the simple. Okay, so what I'm saying is, think of first is, intergenerational correlation of earnings is likely to be positive. It means that this covariance is likely to be positive. Okay, so mathematically, this is gonna be positive because variance is positive number, and alpha and r, they both are positive numbers. So this whole thing gonna be positive. Okay, then what matters is the second thing. The covariance et yt minus 1, whether it's negative, 0, or positive. Can it be negative? Okay, there can be a zero relationship. For example, if this is luck, probably it doesn't matter how rich your parents are. Okay, let's say it's a pure luck. Okay, it's like how lucky you are. Let's say you meet, I don't know, you're just walking on the street, and then you meet Warren Buffett. And this his name is Warren Buffett. Anyway, this guy, this fabulous rich guy, just suddenly like you and hire you and give you money. Okay, that's kind of luck. Okay, that kind of luck probably doesn't matter much whether your parents is lucky, rich or not. So it can be something, can be zero. But you know, we talked about it like nature part. If you think of nature part, this, let's say ET is your inborn ability, how rich your parents are. It's likely to be actually positive. It's true that richer parents are maybe of higher ability. And higher ability can actually likely to have children of higher ability. So relationship can be likely to be positive. Well, I talked about the meeting the fabulous rich guy. Now, obviously, that if your parents are rich, you have more chance to meet that rich guy. Okay? So there's, let's say, a social network. Okay? How connected you are, how much opportunities you can have. That matters. Think of Donald Trump. Donald Trump got $1 million from his father, okay, and made a business, even though he's a horrible human being, right? So this positive relationship, okay, it's unfair, obviously, if you look at him. But, if purely income point of view, okay, that's a positive thing. So his father was rich, so he gave him money to start his business. No matter what happens, he just lost most of his fortune actually along the way, and anyway. And then he made lots of bad, things and whatever. And anyway, it's positive. So what I'm saying is, alpha is positive obviously, but this covariance, if you think about it, it's likely to be positive. Or it's not, at the very least, it's not likely to be negative. Okay? So that's what it is. So means what? This covariance is likely to be positive. So it's not that surprising, if you think about it, to see a positive relationship between child and parents' income. Okay? What matters is actually positive relationship is not that surprising. Actually, what matters is how strong that relationship is. Actually, that's the part that we pay more attention to. Not it's positive. It's positive. Yeah. Why not? There probably has been no society that has negative relationship between parents and child's income. I'm pretty sure. Except for a certain very special cases. If you have a revolution to change whole regime, then it is possible. That happened actually in some cases. Let's say you have a communist revolution in Vietnam, and the whole thing just becomes just upside down, right? But even in that society, time passes, then this relationship becomes positive. So except for a very rare some moment, okay, positive relationship is the norm throughout the history and across societies. So positive relationship is not that surprising, so that's what I say. Now, what I just said is that positive relationship is not surprising, it's just expected, but what it matters is how strong the relationship is. So what are the conditions for the higher correlation or lower income mobility? You look at it, how you make this one big, beta should be big, one way. One way of making it, alpha is big or R is big, okay? So parents have stronger taste for children's income relative to own consumption, then in that society, okay, the relationship is likely to be positive. So if parents care a lot about their children's income, it's going to be positive. Why? Because obviously that people of higher income, people of lower income invest a lot in their children, okay? But people of higher income, simply because they have higher income, they can invest more. So that relationship basically, results in the strong positive correlation between parents and child's income, right? So if, as an extreme case, as I said, let's say if the parents don't care about their child's income, nobody will make investment. What? Then child is just on his or her own. Then mobility is going to be very, very high, right? It's simply because what the child is doing, because the parents don't make any investment in their children. Or if they make very little investment, since they don't care much, then there will be more, more mobility, higher mobility. Okay, that makes sense. And rate of return is higher. If rate of return is higher, people will make more investment. And poorer parents cannot beat the richer parents. Okay? So if the rate of return is very low, then people will not make much investment. And the endowment, this covariance is high. Okay? So if you think about it, for example, like if it's very strong, as I said, the rigid class society, then this covariance, you can say, in a way, it's pretty high, because not your investment, not your education level, let's say. Okay, your social class matters. So ET is your social class, and parents' income is determined by social class. So then this covariance is going to be pretty high. Okay, so that's part. Or the nature part is probably it's a biological, so it's not that different. So it's like a social system, or like opportunities. How evenly the opportunity is distributed. If the opportunity is unequally distributed between rich and poor, this covariance is likely to be high. Okay, so this covariance matters a lot. Okay, so that is the basic idea. So another thing is that if you think of this, let's say you think of like a social system. For example, in the societies where, let's say, that children's education is, let's say, mostly done using public finance. Let's say public education is very strong. Then in that societies, okay, the richer parents and poorer parents will spend, not that different amount of money, because let's say education is done by public systems, and public system, let's say, spends basically equal amount to their children, regardless of their parents, income or social status. Okay? In the societies, IT minus 1 gonna be pretty much equal. Then those societies likely to have more mobile, okay, society, because the investment in children's education or children's income gonna be similar. Okay? So anything that can make IT minus 1 depend strongly on their child's parents' income will make society less mobile. Anything that can make IT minus 1 to have weaker relationship with the parents' income will make society more mobile, like a strong public education, okay, for example. Well, for example, let's say in the societies where the scholarship is, let's say, distributed based on means, let's say. So meaning that parents from children with poorer background are likely to have, let's say, more scholarship, so they can fund their education. And children of richer parents are likely to have not much of a scholarship, okay? So they fund themselves. So that system, the scholarship can itself like equalize the difference between equalize the difference in the parents' in the family background. So that society can make, the intelligent income mobility higher, right? So anything that can make up for difference in IT minus 1, parental investment will make society more mobile. And also, I said that like a social system also matters. Okay. So I said that correlation is the way of calculating it. There has been actually quite a few studies that tries to calculate the correlation, the intergenerational correlation in a given country, let's say in the US, in Korea, or in Europe, or whatever. Actually, it turns out that calculating correlation itself is not that straightforward. Why? Because the thing is that what income you're going to use, that's a problem. You're going to use the income in 2016. You're going to use the income in 2015, right? So what income we are talking about? Are we talking about income in this year? Or are we talking about income, let's say, for a few years? Or income for, let's say, for a lifetime? Actually, if you think about strictly, it should be lifetime income, right? It's not just a single income, because single year income can change. It may go up, go down, depending on, let's say, economic situation, depending on personal you know, personal events. Okay, but let's say if you look at lifetime income, that should be real measure of income. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get the information of lifetime income for any given individual. Okay, you have to follow the same individual for lifetime. Basically, you think about it. It takes long time. Okay, even if you can do it, still your measure will be very infrequent. You can have the measure only. You have to wait for, let's say, 30 years to get that measure. But what you're interested in what's happening right now, but I say, okay, wait for 30 years, I will give you the answer. Okay? That probably, it's not a good idea. Okay. So there is a thing that what is the, what income you're gonna use? Actually, what we are, as I said, what we want is the long run, or at least long run, let's say 20 years, let's say we average them out for 10 years, 20 years. Long run or permanent earnings of both generations. Not only for one, you want to have income for your parents and your child. Okay? So you have to probably wait for 60 years. Because what happens? If you measure it, your child is working, but your parents is elderly, so they are not working. So they don't have any measure of income. So what you need to do, you have to follow the parents, and after some years, you have to start following the child, and then probably it takes 40 years, 50 years to get measure of income. So obviously, that is very difficult. Okay. So actually, current way of doing is to use like a short-term, much more short-term income, like a single year, like for a few years. But it turns out that, as I said, the single year earnings or short-term earnings will depend on lots of other things. Not only your, let's say, your fundamental ability of earnings. Okay, it will depend on, let's say, luck and economic situation and stuff. So there are lots of other things inside, which means correlation between parents' income and child's income generally lower, because it has lots of things in it. That makes the relationship weaker. If you follow them long period of time, generally it's stronger. Okay? So depending on which income measure you use, the numbers tend to differ. Short-term measures usually give you lower correlation. So it can make you think that, okay, our society is pretty mobile. But if you look at the same society but for longer period, longer term income, the correlation is generally bigger, which means, okay, you may think our society is not that mobile. Okay, so it depends. So when you look at this type of, let's say, studies or reports, you should pay attention to how they actually measure the income. Okay, then what matters also is whether you use younger children or older children. Okay? Let's see, if you compare the parents' income with, let's say, children of younger groups, or parents' income with children of older groups. Okay, let's say 20 years old, in their 20s, or in their 40s, in their 50s, numbers tend to be different. Why? Because let's say you guys, think of you guys. When you start your working life after your graduation, your income gonna be very similar. Okay? You're gonna be all, let's say, first year employees of some company, or you just start your business. In the first years, it doesn't actually matter much. Your income's gonna be very similar. There's not that much of difference. But after 20 years, 30 years, your income will be much more different than 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Okay? People actually think, when you are young, we are very similar, I say. Ask your parents. Think of their friends. When they were young, they were very similar. They're not that different in terms of their income, their what they were doing, But after 20, 30 years, it's going to be very different. Which generally means if you use younger children's income, intergenerational correlation going to be lower, because the children are pretty much similar. But if you have older children, then there is a wide difference among income of the children, so that makes correlation actually stronger. Okay? So it matters which income measure you use. Okay, so why I'm talking about this? Because I will talk about it next lecture. Because people try to measure the income correlation, actually, over the years. Okay? And it turned out that when they measure it, they found out that these numbers actually differ. Okay? So their numbers, let's say they found like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is very different from what they find now. Okay? So one reason is because their income measures differ. Because when they started their measuring, obviously the data itself was not that sufficient. So they used generally like short-term incomes. So they found that mobility seems to be quite high. After 10 years, 20 years, when they accumulated more data, they found that actually the correlation got stronger. Okay? So whether is it because that our society just become less mobile, or our measures just changed, even though the society itself didn't change much? There has been question about it, but the answer is that some of the changes are likely to be because their income measure is different. And which one is more reliable? And we can generally say that recent ones are more reliable, because if you use short-term measures, that's not that good, actually. You have to try to use long-term measures. Okay, I think I will stop here today and then continue next week.